Our first witness today, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, is the president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. A devout Muslim, Dr. Jasser founded AIFD in the wake of the 9/11 attacks in the United States as an effort to provide an American Muslim voice advocating for the preservation of the founding principles of the United States Constitution. I must say, as a member of Congress, I remember Dr. Jasser when he was here. He's a respected physician and a former lieutenant commander of the United States Navy, and he actually worked in the attending physician's office here in the United States Capitol. For better or worse, he kept us healthy. Some of our constituents may not be too happy about that, but you did a great job of keeping us very healthy. And again, I appreciate you being here today. And gentleman is recognized. Dr. Jasser. Doctor, if you put on the microphone there, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman King, Ranking Member Thompson, distinguished members of the committee, for seeking my testimony on what I feel is the most important threat to American security in the 21st century. And as Chairman King said, I come to you as a devout Muslim and somebody that is very concerned about our country, and not only its polarization, but its paralysis in dealing with this problem. We formed our organization to address this, but yet we've not been able to even move one step forward significantly because of that paralysis. One camp on the polarization refuses to believe that any Muslim could be radicalized, and yet we see, as we've discussed here until now, a significant increase in the number, an exponential increase in the number of radicalized Muslims that may not be from within our communities that we know, but are Muslims nonetheless. On the other side of the polarity is those that feel that Islam is the problem. They want to label Muslims as all one collective and really are seeking no solutions. I think in the majority in the middle is modern America that is looking for a solution, and I think these hearings are an opportunity for Muslims to address that solution. Let me be clear and state up front that unequivocally for the record that the U.S. has a significant problem with Muslim radicalization. You know, listen, I'm Muslim and I realize it's my problem and I need to fix it, and that's what I'm trying to do. It's unfortunate that you have some of the best work on radicalization is being done by non-Muslims, like the NYPD report on radicalization. Most Muslim groups condemn that report, when in fact we Muslims should have been doing that report. Let me also state clearly that it is a problem that we can only solve. Christians, Jews, non-Muslims cannot solve Muslim radicalization. So yes, there may be other types of violent extremism, but that cannot be solved by non-Muslims. So we can close our eyes and pretend it doesn't exist. We can call everybody a bigot or an Islamophobe if they even talk about it, but you're not going to solve the problem, and the problem is increasing exponentially. What I hope that we can discuss is get beyond this blind concept of violent extremism. It is a final step, but radicalization is a continuum. Cooperation is a continuum. I've personally never known a Muslim that wouldn't report somebody about to blow something up or commit an act of violence. But that's a final step on a continuum of radicalization. I believe there are small elements, but significant elements of ideology within our community that is radicalizing based on the identification, the lack of identification, and the separatism and the disenfranchisement of certain Muslims from this society that makes them not bond, makes them not trust the government, makes them distrust the FBI, and creates a culture of a lack of cooperation. That's what we need your help in solving. America's current paradigm is failing. And you know, I'm a physician. I was trained as a physician to, patients come in, they've got 3 or 4 symptoms. Typically, they have 1 diagnosis. They don't come in with 3 symptoms and 3 diagnoses. So when we look at the problem of radicalization, we have to realize that the panoply of excuses that are given, the foreign policy, our domestic policy, all this kind of stuff, those will never run out. At the end of the day, it's a moral corruption within a certain segment that is using our religion, hijacking it for a theopolitical movement that is not only domestic, but it is global. And the reason I'm here today and taking the time away from my family and my work to do that, to be here with you, is because we're failing. We are not addressing this. We're so much soaking up the bandwidth of the discussion in this country on this with victimization that we're not addressing the core problem and the root cause. And yet these halls, this government was based on discussing religious diversity. Our founding fathers, our establishment clause was based on being able to have discussions that were functional on religion. But yet once a movement, a threat hijacks religion, we seem to become completely dysfunctional and we get histrionics and we can't even talk about it. And I hope we can move beyond that. I fear for the legacy that my children will have, because I want them to be able to have the gift, just like I got from my parents, that felt American the first minute they stepped off the plane when they came from the oppression of Syria, and they understood that they could practice their faith, their beautiful faith of Islam, more freely here than they could anywhere else in the world. Why? Because this government is not under one faith. It's under God, and it's based on liberty. These are the principles. Just as Prime Minister Cameron said, we can't continue to play defense. We need a muscular liberalism. And so far, our tax money, our resources has been squandered. We've continued to play defense. And until we have an ideological offense into the Muslim communities, domestically and globally, to teach liberty, to teach the separation of mosque and state, you are not going to solve this problem. We are not going to solve it. I'm not saying that you can solve theology. You shouldn't be solving theology. That's my problem. But we need to build public-private partnerships, to build platforms where you can advocate for the laws of the Constitution that are universal human rights, that are based in the equality of men and women, the equality of all faiths before law. These are principles that certain pockets of Islamic law, Islamic legalisms within systems in this country and outside are advocating, that are in contradiction with our government, our society, and end up radicalizing on a continuum, end up creating a culture of lack of cooperation. And until you treat that diagnosis, what I call political Islam, spiritual Islam will continue to suffer, our faith community will suffer, and this country's security will continue to suffer. The current groups that have been speaking on our behalf, I think, have been failing. They may be well-intended about civil rights, but their apologetics, their dismissals have been completely failing. I think if you look at Nidal Hassan, he didn't become radical overnight. And if you look at his resume, it's frighteningly similar to mine. But yet, something happened in him over years, and you can't just blame Awlaki. Awlaki himself, before he became a radicalizer, was being radicalized somewhere. And he was giving sermons at mosques in Denver and San Diego and Northern Virginia. And when you talk to certain leaders in the Muslim community, they say, oh, all of a sudden, we don't know what happened. He became violent. That's not the way it works. Pathology creeps up over time, and there is, just as we see in alcoholism, there's enablers. And the enabling that's been happening in some of our, not all, and not even a majority, has been I think, significantly causing a progression of this problem, and that's why we're not treating it and getting better.
Dr. Jasser, if you could try to conclude in about 30 seconds, please.
Yes, sir. So ultimately, we need solutions. Our organization has talked and created a Muslim Liberty Project that looks at inoculating Muslims with the ideas of liberty, giving them the empowerment to counter imams, to feel that they can represent their own faith. We have a retreat coming in the next month to bring Muslims in from all over the country to begin that retreat process. This is our homeland. And we want to set this aside to begin, if you will, a counter-jihad, an offense to counter the ideas that I think is the best way to use our resources as a nation. And remember that the freedoms that we have don't come with a cheap price, and we need to give back. And that the solution ultimately to fear of Muslims, if it exists, is for Americans to see Muslims leading the charge against radical Islam. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jasser.